and I once again am looking forward to the next Stat album, because holy fuck, where do we go from here? By killing the band, I guess. Yes, Stan Atlantic was here. And here. And I don't have the album, but they're also here, despite the album cover. But before we get on to this, let's address the elephant in the room. The, pink elephant, one could say. That little clip from the opening was from my review of this album right here. And what I never thought would ever happen, happened, and the band watched my review and commented on the video. Not only did that give me a little bit of an out-of-body experience, but it also planted this little seed in my mind of the possibility of them seeing this review. So it makes me get a little overthinky, but at least I won't shove my music into this video out of nowhere. That reference is actually pretty topical to this reference. What was it that I said about cabin fever again? Yeah, so anytime I hear Bonnie yell about trap rock being some real weird, it just completely takes me out of the song, because to me, it's pretty normal, even to the standards of Stan Atlantic. Look, I know I have no influence on the sound of this album. I'm fully aware of that. This shit's been cooking up for 2 years. They probably had it fully done by the time they saw my video. Still pretty funny, though. I gotta say, though, this still isn't really weird shit. You guys may be the cuties of the music industry, but you're not the weirdos yet. Stan Atlantic cover a Trout Mask replica win? Joking, obviously. I'm still gonna give my honest thoughts on this album, but they are gonna be from a major fan of the band that has listened to this about 20 or 30 times. And I have a goddamn stat flag in my room. You don't even want to get me started on the amount of merch I have. Anyways, this intro's gone on long enough. Let's get on to the album. Wake Up, Sit Down, Shut Up is easily the best intro track this band has ever done. From the very moment I heard those dark pads with the deep bass, I knew we were in for something else. Even with the 7 singles before this, the track still throws you for a curveball, and I can't even begin to imagine what it would be like hearing this had you not heard any of the singles. God, would that be a trip. There's also what sounds to me like a vocal chop throughout the song, so 10 out of 10, this band gets me. Bonnie singing during the first verse is heavenly. I love that guitar feedback itching its way into the pre-chorus with those heavy palm-muted guitars accented by the kick and bass. Jono's drums have never sounded better, to be honest, and that's the case for the whole album. Several times while I'm listening to it, I end up focusing on just how pronounced they are in the mix and how huge they sound most of the time. In this track's case, James Paul Wisner's responsible for the stellar mix, but props to Stevie Knight, Zach Cervini, Alex Kahina, Colin Britton, Kevin McCombs, Day-Day, as well as Grant Barry for the beautiful production on this whole album. After listening to Pink Elephant and f.e.a.r in my car for several weeks, going to Was Here just sounds so different in all the best ways possible. And as any engineer knows, that if a song passes the car test, then you did a perfect job. And this whole album passes the car test. Everything just sounds so clean and pronounced, nothing feels lacking or hidden, just top-notch overall. When the chorus kicks in, it goes so insanely hard. I've had a liking for the blend of metal and EDM ever since I heard Neutronic's Code War, and I really like that Phase 1 and Silverstein song Enemy for the same reasons. Hearing Stat tackle that kind of sound makes me very happy to hear, and they play into it exceptionally well. That panning synth line is easily my favorite part of the entire song, along with Bonnie's satisfying dead-inside delivery riding on top of the chugging guitars. Going back to the drums, I love the beat for the second verse, especially when the kick lines up with the vocal chop. 10 out of 10, most satisfying part of the song. The lyrics are great, and once again fit perfectly in with this being the best opening track they've done. Doomsday was a nice way of starting f.e.a.r by talking about writer's block and Bonnie not having anything to write about or knowing what to write about. While on Wake Up, Sit Down, Shut Up, it goes straight into the feelings Bonnie had when they started working on the album.
The last, I want to say 3 years or so, I had very much numbed myself from feeling a lot of things just based on the stuff that I was going through. And there was a moment when we were writing this record where I just broke down to our producer and my co-writer Stevie, because he was asking me, he was like, dude, what is going on? You're not on form, you're not writing the way that you would normally. And I think that was just a big red flag for me. And I was like, fuck, yeah, you're right, because I'm not I'm not feeling anything.
And it's not a Stand Atlantic song if something isn't insanely catchy. What this track provides with those maybe I, that got stuck in my head so many times for the first few days of this album's release. Then the song ends by chopping up the pre-chorus, changing the melody around from Miracle and Beautiful, which I find so very satisfying to listen to. Before this album's release, the band had put out this little video on their Spotify page where Potter says his favorite lyric off the album is from this song, with the line being curtain call at a funeral, which is just a really dark sounding line, and I just love Bonnie's metaphors in general, with this one being no exception. And I see why it's his favorite, because it's easily one of mine as well. There's probably several meanings for it, one that is a little more definitive to the actual song itself, but one that I would like to refer to as a double meaning would be for the case of this album as a whole. Referencing a final bow during a moment of celebration for one's death on the intro track for an album that kills off the band we once knew is just beautiful. I really can't hammer in enough how much this is an amazing opening track. Doomsday, Like That, and Lavender Bones got nothing on this. Spoiler alert, this is one of my favorite songs off the album, and it's only the intro, which is already pretty Stand Atlantic. I mean, Like That was my favorite song off of Pink Elephant, but we're starting off on a high note and setting the stage for what this album is. You don't know what the fuck to expect. Which is why this track worked better on the album than as a single. Yeah, Frenemies was the 7th single off the album, and I remember being a bit hyped for it when I first saw the promotion short while at the bar with my friend, thinking to myself, damn, this is nothing like any of the other shit, can't wait to hear it. And then soon as I got home later that night, I put the song on, and was taken out once the halftime chorus kicked in. That's nothing against the song itself, I just personally rarely, if not never, like halftime choruses, just because I personally like a lot of energy in a chorus. The highlight of the song, the climax if you will, and making it slow down in halftime just takes out all of that energy for me, and leaves the track kinda dead. So Frenemies just kinda ended up on the sidelines in terms of the rest of what we had heard, with me never seeking out to listen to it, but if it did play, it just ended up being like background noise if anything. That was until this album came out. Because going from a track like Wake Up, Sit Down, Shut Up, something that is nothing like anything this band has ever done before, opening you up to this concept of what you knew as Stand Atlantic isn't here anymore, into something that is the closest to resembling that old stat pop-punk sound, is such an amazing transition. It expands on that you don't know what the fuck to expect, because after existential EDM metal intro, you start to think, so this is the new sound they're going for? This will be what the whole album is? And then it isn't. The band goes, oh, you thought we were fully metal now, didn't you? Alright, pop punk again, but only for the verses. And the song has vocal chops! I like how the song starts with giving us a little tease of those vocal chops that later come in full force during the breakdown. And just like 99% of the time when I hear vocal chops, I love them. I could listen to them forever. And that breakdown is killer. I love how the beautiful guitar solo leads in this absolute headbanger of a riff, with each pause being filled in with a panned string bend during the first half, and then the second half has the vocal chops filling out the rest of the space. Speaking of panned guitars, I love that radio-filtered guitar riff in the right ear during the second pre-chorus, something I didn't even notice until like my 5th time listening to the album. Another thing I didn't even notice until way later was how Bonnie's delivery of "so" before the chorus changes every time. The first time it's quiet, almost a timid take. The second time it's a full-on yell. And the third and the last one is just a whisper. I don't have any metaphorical takes or meaning on these. I just like how it changes each time. I feel like the lyrics are pretty self-explanatory. I mean, the song's called Frenemies. It's about having a friend who doesn't give a shit about being your friend. Kinda relatable, not gonna lie. And honestly, since the release of the album and hearing the song in the context of the track listing and just listening to the album more and more in general, the halftime chorus has grown on me. Not a favorite, but I'd be lying if I said it hasn't occasionally hit kinda hard. It also works as a great backing instrumental for that guitar solo, which I just feel the need to reiterate how beautiful it is. I don't know who played it. I'm assuming it's Potter. If it is him, good job, Pot. Seriously, going from the thrash solo on Switchblade to this soulful beauty, chef's kiss. Was the 4th single from the album and is what the title suggests. Misogyny! For real though, the lyrics paint a very distinct picture of misogynistic men who sexualize and degrade women, while also calling out the usual talking points from the internet. Lynn referencing how women characters tend to be written in film. Oh. Okay. Or at least, that's how I understood the lyrics to be. But according to the band themselves, this is a lesbian anthem. A song of women appreciation. Given how that's Bonnie's words, I can't really argue with it. I'm not about to be the sexually still in question, but mostly straight man that says disagree to that. And the more I've listened to the song, there have been some lyrics that I can hear in the viewpoint of lesbianism. Wet Dream Desire would be about straight men in the industry sexualizing and fetishizing lesbian sex. I Don't Want to Fuck, So Call Me a Liar is in clear reference to the men who think all women want to sleep with them, regardless of their sexuality, and they must be lying if they say otherwise. Even Lynn's opening line can go towards the point of lesbian sex being fetishized. And in a way, I can see the chorus and the line leading up to it to be a lesbian talking to straight men, but I can also just see it as a woman in general talking to men. But I'll be real. For the longest time, this song wouldn't give me much emotion when listening to it. Even though I can look at the lines now and see the themes of lesbianism in there, I still see this mostly as a dig towards misogynistic men. So when that was how I took the song, while I just see the non-stop spamming in the live chat going, "This is literally the one of my followers' lesbian anthem," I felt like the anti-SJW symbiote was just slowly corroding me. It also didn't help that I found the chorus to sound like it was ripped straight out of an HBO Max original TV show main theme, or Bruce's verse taking me out of the song completely, which is in no way their fault. It's entirely my own because for some reason I just don't like the Spanish language in music. It's never appealed to me, I've never been able to like listening to it, and I have absolutely zero idea why. But you know what drove me the most crazy when it came to this song? Is trying to figure out why I didn't like it. Because there's so many things about it that I do like. The guitar riff in the beginning sounds super clean and pleasing, Bonnie's verse is great, Lynn's verse is even better. I actually like the chorus when you get past the first one because of the inclusion of drumming giving more rhythm and sounds, instead of the start, stop chopping that kills any energy that I feel like a chorus needs, which the drums during the second and third chorus give it that energy. Lynn changing the pre-chorus line to "You still don't know dick about girls," Bonnie's auto-tune vocals of the pre-chorus line right before the final chorus, and I even like Bruce's final line because I think the melody they use along with their delivery sounds pretty satisfying to me. So why the fuck could I not like this song? I still could not tell you why, other than that live chat just severely impacted the song for me given how it was my first impression before I could even hear the track. But I got some good news. It's kinda grown on me. Maybe it was after listening to the song in the shower and noticing every little thing in it that I genuinely like. I don't know. What I do know is that there's been times the song's played in my car and I've just been sat there pretending to play along to the guitar riff or bouncing my leg to the choruses, sometimes even singing along to it. And Bruce's verse is so short that it doesn't really take me out of the song anymore. They just kind of appear for a few lines and then disappear, and it's just become fine for me. Also, I find it really funny that I kept hearing "Am I dead or alive" instead of "Am I bleeding enough?" And the fact that I was mishearing an English line is just... Well, I am the second member on the Council of Jonad for a reason. Nobody's gonna get that joke. But yeah, all in all, I can see this as a lesbian anthem, and if that's what the band says it is, then that's what it is. But personally, I think I'll always just hear it as an own towards misogynist, which is very goated, very W. And I'm growing more and more towards the song in general, which is good. Anyways, with that awkward point out of the way, let's move on to the track that I'm constantly sleeping on. Every time I look at the track list, I see this song, and I can't tell you anything about it. Therefore, I think that it's one of the weaker songs on the album. Then I actually listen to it and realize all the great things about it and wonder why I keep forgetting this. I love the little acoustic guitar arpeggio during the first pre-chorus, the bridge, along with Bonnie's held-out note of help. The electric guitar sounds so distorted and almost synthetic. It sounds so unique and just makes me wonder how they got that tone. Plus, the playing itself is great. I love the end of the bar when the guitar goes. The chorus is really catchy, as stat choruses usually are, and there's a part of me that kind of relates to it in a way. Also, the juxtaposition of "It's a Paradise" and "I'm Freaking Out" is great. Bonnie even has a great flow during the second verse with the rhyming of scum, become, and gum, and how she delivers it so quickly paced while subtly accenting the rhymes.
What a scum I've become, bit of gums and a crooked.
It's a fun little song, though I'm not entirely sure what it's about. Let's read the Apple Music description.
It just goes back to a dark spot that I was in. I was numbing myself subconsciously and in my behaviour. I was partying and doing drugs and drinking without realising I was trying to cover up my feelings.
Oh. Yeah, that makes that second verse make a lot more fucking sense. Even "feed me a line like a parasite." Now all I can think about is cocaine. It's a very stat thing to make a song with such a dark topic sound fun, and given what's been going on in my personal life, I found myself relating to it a bit. Good song, don't have much else to say about it though.
I'd rather be lonely, hate myself than someone you think about.
Nosebleed was the last single on the album, released the same day as the album's release, and is, well, to be honest, it's my least favorite track. It's by no means a bad song, but it's just got so many things about it that don't do much for me or I just straight up don't like. I'm not a big fan of the way the acoustic guitars are mixed. They sound very overly compressed in a way that just isn't pleasing to listen to for me. I guess it could just be that I naturally like acoustic guitars that sound more up close, warm, and personal. The lyrics are mostly a miss for me. I like how Bonnie described the song as if Quentin Tarantino was a song, which I can see that a bit, but I don't know. They don't really pack that punch or impact me the same way that stat lyrics usually do. Bonnie's verse is kinda meh. The chorus is the edgiest a stat song has ever gotten, and the pre-chorus is the weakest point in the song for me. There are two lines that I do find myself kind of relating to, those being I'd rather be lonely and hate myself, and I'm wired Wednesday through to Thursday, same old Friday. Even though the days of the week are non-existent to me and the way I factor days are, am I working or do I have the day off? And finally, in terms of things I don't like, is Suko's voice. I have nothing against Suko himself. I don't know anything about him or his music. I do like how on the back cover of the album, when it's listing the feature credits and them being on their courtesy of their label, it just says Suko appears courtesy of Suko, and I find that sentence very funny. We love an independent king. But despite all my nostalgia for 2005 back when I was in my late teens, I think I just straight up don't like the emo vocal delivery. That scratchy, lispy, whiny tone is just grating to my ears. If there's one thing from the song that does resonate some emotion for me, that tingles my ears a bit, it's that ghostly guitar that sometimes appears in the song, drowning in reverb and echo, which are my two favorite effects. But there's one other part of this song that I've neglected to mention. I have no idea why, but whenever I hear the chorus, I just hear one of the Living Tombstone's FNAF songs.
I'd rather be lonely, hate myself than someone you think about.
Hey, come on, look, I said I wasn't gonna use any of my music. I didn't say anything about making a cursed mashup that caused me absolutely nothing but pain. But yeah, despite Nosebleed not being a bad song, it's the weakest on the album for me, and the one I do actually end up skipping a lot when it comes on. Which, I mean, one skip out of 3 albums is a pretty good track record. The only other song I tend to skip is Drink to Drown, but that's only when I have the album in my car, because I don't feel like driving to a song about drinking your feelings away. I was gonna say I don't feel like driving to Depression, but that's a lie. I've driven to Radiohead several times. Also, it might look like I'm pretending Skinny Dipping doesn't exist. I do like the title track, but I don't know if I've ever actually finished the album. In general, I like the sound of everything after it. Anyway, speaking of sounds...
I hate that she only likes to think the worst.
Love You Anyway was the 5th single, and where I fully had no fucking idea what was going on with this album anymore. Kill Her sounded like both a B-side from F.e.a.R, but also a nice progression afterwards. Sex on the Beach was a complete shift away from any previous sound they had and ushered in the flop era. Warzone made me question how both these songs would end up on the same album. Girls continue that trend of, okay, I don't know what to expect, but, you know, still had a little bit of that pop-punk roots in there. And then you get to Love You Anyway that just sounds like an 80s pop song. It sounds like the sonic equivalent of the word cute. I think it was probably this song that started the whole cuties of the industry branding. It truly made me question what the fuck this album was gonna sound like. How does Warzone and Love You Anyway fit on the same album? I still don't have an answer to that. It just does. Initially, I wasn't that into the song on account of having an extremely stressful and aggravating day at work, so hearing the upbeat, positive energy from this was, not what I wanted to hear in that moment. But after a re-listen when I was home, I liked the song. It wasn't a favorite single of mine, but I enjoyed how cute and fun it sounded. And I don't know how, it just grew on me a lot. The beginning having a lot lower energy than the rest of the song made me think for a bit that I didn't like it all that much, but once you get to the first chorus, the song peaks and never leaves that peak. The chorus is catchy as usual, with explicit lyrics this time around of a toxic relationship, which we all know I'm gonna like. EXO was my favorite song off the last album. Though for some reason, when I get the song stuck in my head, I keep fucking up the chorus and singing They Call It Home and We Call It Fury. But I say that the song doesn't leave its peak because I find the second verse for some reason to be far better than the first one. I guess it's because it's far more explicitly toxic. The first verse sounds like its typical love song, while the second is just straight up one-sided toxicity, and I end up liking it a lot more. I might need help. From what I've read, it sounds like the song was based off of Bonnie's last relationship. You know, the same one that was the inspiration for Blood Clot and XO, which then ended soon after she wrote this song. So... spiritual successor to EXO? Maybe? Overall, I like the song. It's fun, it's cute, very different from anything on this album or anything that they've done. I like it. Honestly, I'm starting to agree with Twitter user Tifa. This is easily my favorite song on the album. The Pantera's walk-style guitar riff goes so hard, and then the chorus is so goddamn infectious. For a while, I thought that one of the singles for this album had my favorite stat chorus of all time, but Kissin' Killer Cobras tops that by miles. Or I'm sorry, kilometers. Towards the end of the song, Bonnie changes her delivery for the first line of the chorus, and it's so good. I love it so much. Feed this shit into my veins. Not to mention just a little vocal chop of Cobras right before the chorus. Bonnie's flow during the verses is once again nothing but amazing. The fast-paced delivery during the first one never fails to get me so hyped up, and the second verse has great timing with the 808s making everything feel so bouncy. One of my favorite parts of the song is during the second verse when Bonnie says overreact, biting her back. Now she's just leaving her teeth in, with the panning changing between overreact and biting her back, plus the voice Bonnie uses delivering the lines just sounds so good.
Biting your back, now she's just leaving her teeth in.
It's so oddly fitting with what she's saying. I love singing along to it. And the way the track slows down during the post-chorus and bridge is so damn smooth. I never notice it or like feel it slow down. It just transitions so well into it and it just becomes part of the groove. I go from practically headbanging to bopping my head along to Jono's kicks without any thought. This was another song of the album where, while I really enjoyed it, I didn't really know what it meant or could mean. So let's look at the Apple Music description again.
I have a fair share of experience in toxic relationships.
Wait a minute.
Sometimes when you're in a toxic relationship, because that's your normal, you lean into that.
No, hold on.
You think it's normal to fight back or participate and perpetuate other toxic interactions.
I really do need fucking help. Look, okay, I'm aware of what I said at the beginning of this video, but come on, guys, did you listen to me give a 500-word essay on one line in EXO and decided, okay, well, every banger on this album is just gonna be about toxic relationships and they're gonna be the best songs on the album? No, yeah, obviously I would love this song so much. I need therapy. I already have therapy. I need more therapy. That's not even mentioning the fact that this comes after Love You Anyway. No, but actually, it's not surprising to me that my favorite song on the album would end up being the one that's the epitome of toxic relationships. I just feel personally attacked.
Bitch, I'm like a cyclone entering the war zone. Say it to my face.
Warzone was the third single and made me so incredibly curious on what this album was gonna be, but it also became one of, if not, my favorite single from the album. And that may or may not be partially caused by it dropping on my birthday. Nah, it's mostly because it goes so hard. I've heard complaints about the production of the song, but personally, I really like it. The guitars are incredibly heavy. I'd say the heaviest any Stat song has sounded. I love the bounce that the 808s have during the verses. That lead sound is so dirty and grimy, and according to Bonnie, is actually an acoustic guitar.
The riff, I don't even know. I literally can't even remember. Originally, it was written on like we recorded it on a really shitty acoustic guitar and just kind of left it and like fucked with it a bit and made it sound like really like fucked and disgusting.
Now, not to bring Andrew Huang into this, but taking an acoustic guitar and distorting the fuck out of it, making it into a sound never heard before, does kind of sound like something he would do. Or at least something I would do after watching a shit ton of Andrew Huang, so it's no wonder that I like this. But my favorite instrument in the song, by far, is the synth line that plays during the chorus. Its beeps and boops go so insanely hard. It is exactly the kind of thing that would appeal to me. I don't know, maybe it was me growing up on some overly produced metal that makes me enjoy this song. And by overly produced metal, I mean Five Finger Death Punch after their first album. And yeah, the lyrics are kind of weak, I can admit that. But I also just don't really care. Yeah, a chorus that consists of only "say it to my face" is a little weak, but for whatever reason, I just like it. I like hearing angry Bonnie, and the way she says it sounds really satisfying to me, especially when she pauses during the 5th line. It adds enough difference to not make it mind-numbingly boring, at least to me. And of course, I like the verses. Something about Bonnie saying, "if you a bad bitch," or "making daddy proud now," just pleases me. So yeah, even on its drop, I enjoyed it. I think coming after Sex on the Beach also enhanced the experience for me because it's such a far cry from that sound, and the rest of their discography, that, like I said in my favorite songs of 2023, what the fuck is this album? So I already liked the song to begin with, having absolutely no idea what it could possibly mean, and then a few weeks later I found out what it meant.
It's basically me being like, fuck you, to the keyboard warriors.
And then I loved the song. Yeah, an entire track dedicated to keyboard warriors coming out around the time my Joker ranking video was getting popular and I was being flooded with "your opinion is shit mid-wrong" comments. It's no surprise that I love this song. Like I said, this band just gets me. But for real though, ever since I read that, I've enjoyed the song a lot more, and found myself putting in a bit of anger and annoyance whenever I sing along to it. The "say it to my face" becomes even more hard, but the line that sticks out to me the most is, "I think you're high risk, want to entertain it," because there has been countless of times that I have wanted to reply to a comment, and I just have to remind myself that the better option is to not, and I need to not. But yeah, overall, Warzone is still my favorite single, and it's one of my favorites off the album. But because this is Stand Atlantic, and they already did this with F.e.a.R, there are so many other songs that are better than this, and I don't know how they keep doing it.
You can't keep getting away with this!
Criminal... What? Criminal was the 6th single, and one that I know piqued a particular beardie's interest, with it featuring Polaris, a metalcore band. Pop-punk band collaborates with metalcore band during an album cycle where they're nowhere even near pop-punk anymore. What a time to be alive. To say I wasn't interested isn't entirely correct. I just didn't have any thoughts on the feature, and in terms of the whole track list, I was more focused on this 17 reprise thing. We'll get back to that. But the song came out as a single, and while I wasn't the biggest fan when I initially heard it, that was because it was right before I was going to sleep or right after I woke up. I can't remember. But I wasn't in a state of mind to be able to fully enjoy this. Thankfully, though, I decided I'd give it a second listen while I was driving. It was a rare sunny day in Washington, and that chorus hit. I remember when I said that one of the singles had my favorite Stand Atlantic chorus? Yeah, it was this one. I don't know how I can explain in words why I thought this was my favorite Stand Atlantic chorus, other than it just hit different. Something about the lyrics, the occasional space between lines, Bonnie singing, her flow, her melodies, the rhyming of criminal, a little, and cynical all right next to each other, while over such a feel-good instrumental. It may be a bit weird for me to call this a feel-good instrumental when it's got more of that dark vibe, that metal or metalcore or punk or whatever the fuck you want to call this. But like many things, it all comes back to the drumming. Giano does this drum beat here that I don't know what to call. It feels like an offbeat, open hat riff, but I'm not entirely sure if that's actually what it is. But it feels like that to me, and it sounds amazing. And if you know me, you know that the offbeat open hat is my favorite type of drumming, thanks to Jim What's Wrong With Him by The Dramatics. Seriously, go listen to that song. 3 minutes, 37 seconds in is absolute nut material. And I mentioned that it was a sunny day because I think that played a part in me loving this chorus so much. It's almost feel-good vibe soundtracking me driving 50 down the road on a bright sunny day was just perfection. It not only fit the vibe, it enhanced it tenfold. That's not even mentioning the verses with that extremely groovy synth bass, chopped up wailing guitars, and the random drum fills. The song's about going out and fucking up your life or putting yourself in bad or dangerous situations just so you have material to write about. Something that I thought was a kind of neat topic given how I remember back when Death Wish first came out. F.e.a.R hadn't even been made yet, and Bonnie was doing an interview about it, and when asked about Album 3, she brought up this entire point. I found myself relating to it back then, and I still relate to it now. And now that I've given a bunch of positives, it's time for me to say the one negative I have towards this song. I don't like the breakdown. You'd think a metalhead would love this shit, and most of them do. I've had several disagreements with Jonas about this breakdown. But if you've watched my favorite songs of 2023, or maybe even my New Empire Volume 2 review, you would know that I'm not your typical metalhead. Is the breakdown bad? No. Does it interest me? No. It's the one part of the song that takes me out of it during the entire section. It doesn't make me bang my head, it doesn't go hard for me, I just kind of sit there and wait for it to be over. And it doesn't really help that hearing a grown man scream beg for mercy just makes me think of 15-year-old me during my 5-finger death punch phase, thinking that I'm so tough and badass and not someone to fuck with because I'm lip-syncing to Boots and Blood. And a quicker way to say that, it sounds edgy to me. But again, that's just me. And while it does impact my listening in the moment, it's not enough to just flat out ruin the song. And to Jamie's credit, I actually do like how he delivers the "such a goddamn shame" line.
It's such a goddamn shame, but what?
He's got that perfect amount of anger in his voice when he says "goddamn" that I really enjoy it. It's one of the highlights of singing along the song for me. But yeah, it's a good song overall, and what used to be my favorite Stan Atlanta chorus until they somehow managed to top that with "Kissin' Killer Cobras." And despite my personal thoughts with the breakdown, I have heard this song an ungodly amount of times. Remember that part in the beginning of this video when I said that I get a little overthinky because I have this little thought in my mind that the band might watch this review? Yeah, so, what the hell am I supposed to say about this? If you haven't heard the song, it's basically about sexual assault. And I don't know how I'm supposed to talk about this. I have to tread carefully with this one on account of it being based on Bonnie's actual experience. Firstly, I'm gonna get all my reviewer brain thoughts out of the way and as quick and concise as I can because I don't feel entirely comfortable overanalyzing literal trauma. I feel like you can tell that this is going to be a very different song from the moment Bonnie's vocals come in. Her delivery sounds nothing like it has on any other song. You can already hear the anger in her voice just from the opening words. The way she delivers "kill me" and "take me" during the chorus are perfect. It's that dead inside delivery but tenfold, and that final "me" just sounds so deprived, especially in the chorus when she's shouting the previous words. It fits a lot with what the song's about. And the final part in the song where she's just belting out these anger-filled "I wish we never fucking met" put me in a state of fear for the first few times I heard the track, and if there's anything from this that I can relate to, it's that part. And I really hope I'm not overstepping and being offensive when I say this, but somehow the chorus is kind of catchy. That feels really fucked up to say, but it was a thought I had after a decent amount of listens. I think that just goes to show how incapable Stan Atlantic is at not writing a catchy chorus. Even the intro is so lighthearted with a trap beat and vocal chops, it does not prepare you in the slightest for what the song's actually about. I know Bonnie said that she didn't want to put this song on the album, but she became fine with it just for the sake of other survivors to have something to possibly relate to. And I get where she's coming from, and I'm glad she did put this on here. As someone who goes to music to help them get through dark times or certain emotions, I'm glad there's another song out there that could help a survivor get through their trauma. And it takes a lot of guts and strength from Bonnie to put your experience out there in the open. Now, remember when I brought up during Criminal how I was focused on this track and its reprise? Well, that was because I thought that the reprise would be like a different rendition of this track. Like, we'd go from 17 to then 17 again, but it's done in one take, an acoustic or something. I don't know. I thought that would be really strange and kill the album's pacing immediately. Well, turns out I was wrong, and I'm glad I was, because the reprise is instead just the second part of the song. We go from this angry track to a slow-down piano ballad-esque song where Bonnie reflects over what happened, saying that the experience doesn't constantly weigh on her, pretending that it's a "we were just kids" scenario before breaking it down and seeing that it certainly is not that, and ending it on such a depressing but unfortunately true note. I put this track in the same segment because I feel like acting like it's its own song is doing it a disservice. These are two tracks that should always be played together in my opinion. So yeah, 17 is the darkest and most depressing song in Stat's discography, but hopefully it'll also be its most helpful one for survivors. I struggled to call it one of their best, but that's mostly because I don't feel comfortable saying that a song based solely on a super traumatic experience tops everything else that they've done. That just sounds kind of fucked up to me. What I will say is, can we talk about how genius it is to have this come after Criminal? For two reasons. One, because the song Criminal is about using your life as your lyrics and throwing yourself into dangerous scenarios so you have something to write about, basically using your pain as music, and then following that up with a song based off of literal trauma. And two, because the man that did this to Bonnie is a fucking criminal. Sadly, I don't think he ever went to jail or got punished for what he did, but I hope he does. Also, that "don't think your mom would be too proud, what if I told her" is one of the best lines in the song, in my opinion.
So if the girls are gone, she's got me up.
Okay, so with that out of the way, let's get into possibly my second favorite song in the album, the love song.
Are you deaf? That's not a love song.
Wait, what do you mean it's not a love song?
That isn't a love song.
And what's it about?
That again is just back to a toxic relationship situation.
You fucking kidding me? Yeah, my dumb ass heard the chorus and thought it was supposed to be all lovey-dovey.
Of course you would say it's a love song. It's all fucking guns and you are American.
Nonetheless, this is still tied with Kissin' Killer Cobras as my favorite song in the album. I know I started this segment with calling it my second favorite, but I really have no idea which one wins. They're both bangers. G.A.G starts off with the title being sung with this heavenly reverb drowning it, going into a nice soft arpeggiated guitars, and then the opening line being the most straightforward, "This is a toxic relationship" line I could possibly hear. Again, I have no idea how I thought this was a love song. I have the media literacy of Drake, apparently. Speaking of heavenly reverb, the reverb thrown into the background during the Heaven's Hell line is exactly that. Heavenly.
Wishing for heaven's hell.
I struggled to describe the vibes of the chorus. It's insanely catchy as usual, but there's a slight bit of fun to it. Something in there that makes it so enjoyable to hear and sing along to. And given how they made such a dark topic like addiction and numbing emotions sound fun on Freaking Out, this is no surprise. And the final chorus, oh my god. The moment I heard Bonnie's backing harmonies on it, I fell in love tenfold with this song. They're so fucking good, with my favorite being during the "Yow, rest in peace." Her voice sounds so beautiful during it.
She's got me on my knees, yeah, rest in peace.
Then there's the bridge that features both a Hoover and vocal chops, transcending reverb, sidechained fuzzy bass, vocal chops. God, this band gets me. And of course, I love Bonnie hitting the high notes on Bulletproof. G.A.G is a great song, and I genuinely struggle on figuring out if I like it more than Kissin' Killer Cobras. Again, I feel very personally attacked with how the two best songs in this album are about toxic relationships. And one note I do have about this track, I like how Bonnie gave up on avoiding pronouns with this song and explicitly uses she, making this great for lesbians and bisexual women, but ends up still working for straight men. I just find that pretty neat.
Heaven's head like a big rock star. Ask my friends, they don't know who you are.
In the Apple Music description for this album, Bonnie says,
We were just like, if this song is sounding pop as hell, let's roll with it.
and I think about that sentence every single time I listen to Rockstar because of that really poppy synth line in the beginning, along with those reggae guitars. I say reggae because that's what I've seen everyone call them. I honestly have no clue myself. It's also referred to as reggae in the Apple Music description of the album, so there's that, I guess. But anyways, if you told me that Stand Atlantic was gonna come out with a diss track towards some misogynistic lead singer the same year that Kendrick would body Drake, I would think you were crazy. And you know the best part about taking forever to make a video is that sometimes new stuff comes out during that time. Had I been able to make this video around the time the album came out, I would have never been able to mention the Red Hook song, Bomb.com, which sounds like it's about the same exact person. Which makes me even more desperate to know who the hell these are about. I know there's been some theories going around, there's been a couple bands that's been named. I'm not gonna mention any of them because it's all allegedly. I don't really want to name drop a band as if like this song is towards them and then, you know, later find out they had nothing to do with any of this shit. But yeah, I would very much love to know who this is about. As much as I hate Gossip Girls, I am a gossip-loving bitch. But back to the song itself. It's fun. I'm a broken record here, but the chorus is catchy as usual. That can just go for any and all stat songs at this point. I find that the song does the low-key chorus really well. There's several other times on this album where the chorus plays and there isn't much in the instrumental as later on in the track, as a way of building up the energy throughout the song, and Rockstar does it the best, in my opinion. And my favorite part of the song is during the second verse when Bonnie says, "I just love that."
I just love that.
I love her delivery of it. That rough gravel in her voice sounds so great. Second favorite is when she gives that little laugh after the "is there anything worse" line.
Is there anything worse?
I'm ashamed that I completely forgot to mention that she compares this guy to a tampon. It's like one of the greatest fucking things I've ever heard in my life. Yeah, overall, it's a nice little fun diss track towards somebody, which is not something I would have ever expected from this band, but I'll gladly take it.
Sex on the beach,
Okay, this section's gonna be short on account of me covering this song during my favorite songs of 2023 video. To give you the Cliff Notes version, this is a great song, a great way to issue us into the flop era. The electronic sound isn't all that surprising from the band. It's a banger. I want to mosh to that breakdown. Catchy as fuck. I still love this song, but as usual with the band, it's nowhere near my favorite on the album just because of how many more bangers there are on here. I do find it kinda neat that this plays after Rockstar, a song about someone who talks shit behind your back and truly doesn't actually care about you, being followed up with a song about people who don't give a fuck about you and only want to be your friend for the sole purpose of social status and networking is, I don't know, pretty cool. One could say genius. The track listing on this album is probably their best in my opinion. Finally, we end the album off with the first single, Kill Her, which at first I thought was a little weird until I read what Bonnie had to say about the song.
It feels like you're killing off a version of yourself. It's kind of like wishing to get that old you back, but realizing that that person doesn't exist anymore, and you're left with this shell of whatever the hell you used to be.
Ending an album off called Was Here that has an album cover of the band dead and being dragged away with the song about killing off a version of yourself is incredibly fitting. Killer would have definitely been on my favorite songs of 2023 list had Sex on the Beach not been released in the same year. At the time, it sounded like it could have been a B-side off of Fear while still moving forward with the band's sound, with it being incredibly catchy as usual. And speaking of Fear, I find that part of the song to be really interesting. This is probably the most old stat sounding song on the album, and I find it neat that if you listen to the album on repeat, you go from an old stat sound to the electronic metal that is Wake Up, Sit Down, Shut Up. But if, say, you're on Spotify and just listening to the albums as you go down their discography, then you go from this to Fear, which works as a great transition in my opinion. Overall, it's a great song, and I like it just as much as everything else on the album. When this initially dropped, it was a bit weird ending it off with the first two singles, songs that I had already heard 100 times by then, but given how I can only listen to music in my car using CDs, I will gladly have this song on the album. Though, obviously, I wonder what garlic bread they eat at Mensa is the best outro track in Stat's entire discography. I don't think they'll ever be able to top it. I love Australian music.
I fucking sold out so hard, Mum. Instead of sold out. MILF Atlantic.
Stand Atlantic Was Here is yet another monstrous step forward for the band. I said back in my Fear review that the album allowed the band to continue using other genres as inspiration while keeping their pop-punk sound, and the only thing I was wrong about in that statement was the keeping their pop-punk sound. I mean, they still kinda do with tracks like Frenemies, Kill Her, and maybe Freakin' Out, but Was Here shattered everything that F.e.a.R was trying to do when it came to genre bending. I was pretty sure this was my favorite Stand Atlantic album shortly after it came out, and after, 4 months, I can confidently say it is. I still love F.e.a.R, but Was Here just strikes a different chord with me. I love seeing this band just say fuck it and make whatever the hell they want to make regardless of genre. They can continue making the pop-punk they're known for, while also taking several steps forward and expanding their sound. F.e.a.R no longer defines their sound. This album does. And what is the Stand Atlantic sound now? You don't fucking know. There's just no way to expect it now, and I absolutely love it. Stat has now put themselves in a place where they can truly do whatever the fuck they want and still sound like themselves. I said in the beginning of the video that Stand Atlantic is on this album for a reason. A lot of people, specifically r/pop-punk, want to pretend that Stat fell off or they're no longer the same with this album, but I vehemently disagree with that notion. Just because it's not a 100% pop-punk album doesn't mean it's not Stand Atlantic. This is still as much of a Stand Atlantic album as F.e.a.R or Pink Elephant or Skinny Dipping were. You still get the catchy riffs, earworms for chorus and melodies, the clean production that comes from working with Stevie Knight on every album, and you have Bonnie's one-of-a-kind lyricism. Was Here still has all the fundamental things about the band that made me fall in love with them, it just expands upon it by implementing the sounds of other genres, which coming from someone who loves that kind of shit, it's no surprise this ends up being my favorite in their discography. My one and only problem with the album was the single rollout, and I know that has nothing to do with the album itself or even the band really. I don't think the band really has much of a say in how many singles they need to release. That's probably more on the label themselves, and I just wish we could go back to an album only having 2 or 3 singles. Getting half the album before its release partially ruins the excitement in the album finally dropping. I mean, straight up, at a certain point, I had just thought about not listening to any of the singles as they were coming out, just so then I could be surprised by the album. Unfortunately, my love for Stat is too strong and I couldn't control myself. I just had to listen to any new song coming from them. And I'm well aware that this isn't an issue with just this album. I've had this issue with other albums as well, but I just thought I'd use this one as a way to express my disdain for this new release strategy. I get it, we're in the world of albums don't mean anything and everything's just singles, but god fucking damn it, I wish we could just have 2 to 3 singles. I'm sick of knowing half the album before the album even comes out. But other than that, this is a great album from front to back. If Fear made me wonder what else could come from this band in the future, Was Here just leaves me absolutely baffled. I cannot give any guesses as to what the next album will be like. I just gotta sit back and wait for the rollout. And even then, I don't think I'd be able to guess. And I also just want to shout out every single name that worked on this album, whether it be from the actual band members, the features, the producers, and engineers, to even just the people that worked on this artwork, because without any of them, we wouldn't have the album that we have today. So, huge shout out to Bonnie Fraser, Mickey Rich, Jono Panici, David Potter, Lynn Gunn, Amelia Ramirez, William Schultz, Jamie Hales, Stevie Knight, Grant Berry, Day Day, Zach Cervini, James Paul Weisner, Alex Kahina, Colin Britton, Kevin McCombs, Cody Stebbings, Brandon Lung, and Abby Coulson. All of you people together have created a fucking masterpiece of an album. As usual, I'm excited for what Stat has to bring next time, especially if it'll be more of this not giving a fuck and doing whatever the hell they want. Take your picks on what genres they're gonna incorporate next. My guesses are country, surf, ska, and psychedelic. Maybe we'll even get funk or R&B. I also hope we get a Stan Atlantic Red Hook collab someday, as well as that guitar solo from Bonnie's dad. I'm still waiting for that shit. And a huge thank you to Sarah Jacklin for providing voiceover for the Bonnie quotes, Jonas for helping me with the 1-bit during G.A.G, and Getting Olive for letting the use of Wii Bowling gameplay even be possible in this video. As well as Blake for sending me the Apple Music descriptions. I know that may not seem like much because I could just look it up myself, but without you, I literally wouldn't have even known of their existence. And with that is the Stan Atlantic Was Here review. Such a fucking amazing album.
And of course, everyone has their own opinion, but my opinion is the best opinion. I'm sure you figured that out already.
Subscribe, please.